there's the comparison of mutually assured destruction, which is basically the reason, the theory is the reason why we've, thankfully not nuked ourselves into oblivion. But the fact of the matter is that, like, one of the things I think we run into, too, is with her doing this, God, yeah, there's, obviously she's been kind of handed the idiot ball, but yeah, you're right. At the same time, it's also that, well, see, there's people that can't be reasoned with, but then, like, in the same breath, when you get, there's things that can't be reasoned with, she also gets, like, more information about, like, the zebra's point of view, and, like, all the other stuff that, like, the Ministry of Awesome was doing, and how, like, Rarity was thinking about, like, soul-jarring armor.
Yeah,
and that sort of thing. And, like, with finding the prophecy in Zebratown, like, one of the things that Pip even thinks to herself is she's like, no wonder Fluttershy's plan failed horribly. It had nothing to do with the fact that, it had nothing to do with the fact that the zebras were unreasonable.
Yeah.
They were just backed into a corner.
Yeah.
And they didn't have an option.
I mean, because it's the difference between the zebras and the raiders. Because the raiders, the story, as far as the story is concerned, the raiders are non-persons. The zebras, there is that whole thing about when Luna gets involved, the war escalates for we believe cultural reasons into an existential struggle, and it's like I can see the story writing itself into a point where, from the zebra's perspective, destroying the world is a preferable option to letting their Nightmare Moon win. It's it's yeah.
Yeah.
So
well, preferable to letting Nightmare Moon win, or dealing with the fact that, like, again, it's that issue of tech progression. Like, eventually it gets to the point where, realistically, if your enemy has advanced to the point where you cannot keep up with them from a tactical perspective, well, do you have an option? Do you have a choice?
Yeah. And it's from that same point of view that I feel Steelhooves' prejudice towards zebras is entirely justified.
Every zebra, though?
The vast majority of zebras. Because you have to admit, the regional zebras that exist in Equestria are the minority.
I don't. I suppose we're relying on the accounts of Midnight Shower here for that. I feel like I'd need to go back and read stuff. I feel like we're kind of sliding back into a previous topic here, so when we've still got Canterlot to get through.
Right, yeah, that's still weighing heavily on my mind. We still haven't gotten Canterlot yet.
So
I did just kind of want to get into Glyph Mark one last time, because I actually forgot about the notes I had written down for the prophecy that was found in the jail cell.
You're welcome.
So, let me just pull that up again real quick, because it was actually really good. By the light of our stars, we illuminate your end, and shine on the graves of all zebra kind. 100,000 nightmares will descend upon you. The armies of our dark child will fill the skies, and foes from impenetrable cities will fall upon all your lands. Shielded by armor crafted from their very souls, rejoice with us, for every single one of you shall die. So,
happy.
As with most prophecies, they're vague and open to interpretation. As I've already established, everything I say is right, so here's my interpretation of this prophecy. So, 100,000 nightmares will descend upon you. This is obviously referring to the missiles and the mega spells and the balefire bombs dropping all over Equestria. Now, the armies of our dark child, that's capitalized, dark child, will fill the skies. I'm honestly not sure what dark child refers to here. And foes from impenetrable cities will fall upon all your lands, impenetrable cities. Now, I don't know about you two, but when I think of impenetrable cities, the first thing that comes to mind are the stables, because they are cities and they are impenetrable. But foes from impenetrable cities will fall upon all your lands. That's very confusing to me, but it's the next line that I've really focused in on. Shielded by armor crafted from their very souls. Okay, so this line. This line is not referring to the Steel Rangers, because Applejack adamantly refused Rarity's research on soul jars. So it can't be the Steel Rangers and their armor. But if we take into account that impenetrable cities refers to the stables, shielded by armor crafted from their very souls, this is what makes me believe that Apple Bloom got involved in soul jar magic, and she got it from Zecora, and it's been used throughout every project she worked on, and that explains why the SPP towers are very resilient, and they haven't suffered any damage over 200 years. That would explain why Little Pip's Pip-Buck could take a light machine round, or I'm sorry, an anti-machine round, and like survive a shot from that. And also how she keeps finding computers that are still running 200 years later, which is backed up by the fact during the phone call between Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle, where it's like two sides of a conversation. Apple Bloom called Sweetie Belle to talk about Applejack's assassination attempt in the coma, and Sweetie Belle overhears Fluttershy crying to Rarity about being called a traitor. It's like all these things happening in one phone call. And Apple Bloom makes an offhand remark of like, oh, I bet I could make better computers than the ones that are out on the market right now. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on the prophecy in Glyphmark. Or, I'm sorry, Zebratown. I know.
It could also be a reference. I was just thinking it could also be a reference to Raptors and Thunderheads.
This is also true. The armies of our Dark Child, where the Pegasi embrace the Shadow Bolts from the very first episode of the series, where they're like Nightmare Moon's cronies, but not really.
And Rainbow Dash stated that she specifically did that because it freaked them out.
Yep.
Psychological warfare, yay!
So, yeah, that's all I had to say. I know that's a lot to take in, and I know it's a hard pill to swallow, but yeah.
I guess I just hadn't thought about the prophecy too much in terms of like what it literally refers to. I mean, it's one of the details that didn't jump out at me as much, so I don't have as much to say about it really.
You know, actually thinking about it now that I'm like reprocessing things, actually, no, that makes a lot more sense of thinking that the reference, because it's a prophecy and that was kind of an impetus for things. And considering that there's been some suggestions that a lot of the zebras had similar things happening back at home, it would be interesting to me to see whether or not, like, if one of the things that was repeatedly mentioned that as still the reason why the Equestrians were still winning the war was because air superiority is a thing.
Yep.
And yeah, that being a potential future for them of, you know, if the Equestrians had been able to like ramp up their Raptor and like Thunderhead production, I mean, we see later in the fifth volume, like, just how much damage a single Raptor can do by itself. You know, and, you know, the indication is there's somewhere around, like, 50 to 60 that were remaining, basically, after the war ended. And then there's 4 of these Thunderheads, which are, like, that on steroids. And half the time that I always think of Thunderheads, I think of, like, basically, like a gold Hatak mothership floating on clouds, which is a horrifying image. But, like, you know, that sort of thing, like, there's 4 that survives that, and Pip blows up a bunch of them, but, like, the fact of the matter is those things are...
Doesn't one blow up another one? Just
Yes.
because...
Yeah, one blows up another one.
We'll get into the stupid stuff next podcast.
Yeah, but basically, like, that's a horrifying thought. Of, like, seeing those things and, you know, how massive these thunderheads would be. You know, I don't know, that just, it makes a lot more sense, and that, you know, that would be the zebra fear of equestrian air superiority. So. Absolutely.
Anyways, I'm sorry to distract us further. I just had to talk about that. It was burning in my mind.
Well, you were here to talk about the story, and